Hi. In this video, we're going to cover grading a very simple skirt. This is a skirt that would have a one-piece front, and maybe on, if we draw a back view here, we would have a centre back seam which would allow for our zip fastening, and there are some darts. So to start off with, I would have my front panel. I will draw around it on my piece of paper, transferring all relative markings. I'm only doing a very short example here just to reduce waste, and it means that we can see it all within the frame. So after drawing around my pattern piece here, I have my dart marked, my notch point here at the side, which is actually in line with my hip. And then we have our waist and our hem. Now, we know from the previous video that our body circumference grades are 5 centimeters. I'm just going to draw a line here. So this is at 90 degrees to my center front here, which is our grain line, and I've just extended it out further than our pattern piece, and it matches with our notch for the hip placement as well. So if we go back to our drawing here, we can see that our body circumference here we know is 5 centimeters from our previous video, as I mentioned earlier on. So here I can show you a little diagram to refresh on that. So we have our waist grade being 5 centimeters, and our hip and our hem would be the same. So if our front here is in one piece and this center front is on the fold, we want to apply half of our 5 centimeter grade. So if we think we have 2.5 centimeters going on the front and 2.5 on the back, in total making 5 centimeters. So therefore here, our front, this is a quarter. So it is actually half of our center front. So half of 2.5 is 1.25. So we know from our side seam or the edge of our pattern here, we need to measure 1.25 centimeters to the next size. And we can come down 1.25 for the size beneath. So our base size here would be a 12. This would make a 14. And this would make a 10. This principle here of a 5 centimeter grade that we have divided into a quarter for the quarter of our skirt would also be applied to the hemline. So again, we know our hemline on this skirt is at 90 degrees to our center front, which is our grain line, and we can go 1.25 up and 1.25 down. And we can just extend that line there. Because remember, our skirts are sold in overall lengths. So for example, you would buy a mini skirt which might be 18 inches. So all the skirts from waist to hem would be the same length. So therefore this just grades in the circumference of our body, same as the hip. And then the same as our waist. But on our waist here, you can see that we have a curve. And we need to ensure we run parallel to our grain line. So what I need to do is make sure, I'm just going to come on the other side of my camera, that from that actual point there where our lines converge, our grading point, we want that to be at 90 degrees to our center front, because I want to create a line that is parallel to the others that we have here. Then I would mark that as 1.25 and 1.25. Again, our size 10 and our size 14. And of course, using a pattern master or a grading square, as I have here, we have our point 0, and we can go up and down a size at a time. Now, if we remember going back to our grading increments and our image, I have here that between our bus points, it needs to grade a centimetre. So what we would do, where we have our darts on our skirts, I will also shift them across, so the distance between on each size is a centimetre. This means that we maintain proportion, which is key as we go through the size range. So again, if we imagine there's a centre line here, in total they move a centimetre, so half of that is 0.5. So where I have the base of my dart, I'm sorry, I'm having to move this slightly due to camera position. I am going to draw a line at 90 degrees here with my grain line, parallel with my grain line, and across at the base of the dart. I am then going to move this 5 mil per size. I then also need to do the same with the top points of our darts. So I could either square across from the previous line I have drawn, or I can square from the centre front. This would all depend on the size of your pattern. I'm working on half scale here, so it means that I can use the centre front line with my grading square easily enough. But if this was full scale, I would have to draw the other lines to make sure I am on the right axis here. So again, I would go 5 mil either side, and on this one, 5 mil either side. So then we draw in our new lines. So if I do this in a coloured pencil, you'll be able to see our size 10 dart, our size 12 is in the pencil, and then if I use another colour, we can do our size 14. So we'd apply this principle now to joining all the other measurements we've used. And what helps here is when you use the actual pattern you've drawn around originally to trace to create the shape. So what we can do here is with my original pattern, I can use them to line up my points, joining them together, so we're ensuring we have the same sort of curve, same sort of line, keeping this distance, this grade and increment, this space in between here at a constant width, and then the same for our 14. You would need a very sharp, hard pencil when grading by hand. Here I'm using something that is a little bit soft, but it means you can see it clearly enough on the video, and we can illustrate in colours. So here in the waist, we have a little bit of a curve. So again, I would use my pattern here that I have as a template to match the point of my dart to the curve up to the side of the waist. And then I would do the same for the 14. Also finishing it off here at the center front. And you can see there's just a fraction, the dart point running all into the same point at the waist. So there's a little bit of height running down in. So that gives us how to grade the front of the skirt. And the back, the same increments would apply. Now, doing this manually, we are looking at the grade we need to apply and just place it on. If I was doing this on a computerized system, we could then give these measurements we have here what we call grade rule numbers. So, for example, we know this here has moved 1.25 centimeters in what we would call a plus Y. So we would represent we'd have a Y, a minus Y, an X, and a minus X axes. So what we're looking at here is imagining this is on a grid reference. And we would then plot these measurements. So all these three here are all moving in exactly the same way. They are moving in a y-axis of 1.25. So if we wished, we would have our waist point here that is not moving. We could call that rule 1, which means it is 0. This point here would be rule 2. And rule 2 would equal, and we would have maybe a chart like so. So we would say rule 2 in the y-axis is 1.25. So this one would also be rule 2, and this would be rule 2. So the same will apply to our back panel when we grade that, because even though we have a seam here on our front, we are just saying then that was cut on the fold. This one will have a seam allowance applied to it. So the actual grading of it is no different from the front. So that is our first garment we've graded, and that is our two-piece skirt.